Devin Ashworth was 38 years old, and up until that Tuesday morning he thought he had a solid marriage. Not flawless, but genuine. He worked as a facilities operations manager, putting in extra hours without any fuss, giving love freely without tracking favors, and had recently obtained a home equity loan to completely finance his wife Patrice's vision for her own venture. He reached her hospital room carrying her preferred flowers, birds of paradise, mentally practicing how he would share the good news. The door stood slightly ajar. Sounds drifted out from inside. He lifted his hand to knock, then he caught her words. His wife's voice, relaxed and open, confiding to her closest friend that she cared for him the way one loves a cousin, comfortable and safe, nothing more. She had been mapping out her departure for 2 years. What she truly required from Devin wasn't affection, it was his solid credit rating and his quiet compliance. He remained perfectly motionless in that corridor. He did not let the flowers fall, he made no noise at all. And right then, Devin Ashworth reached a conclusion that Patrice could never have anticipated. Before we dive deeper into the tale, drop a comment about where in the world you're tuning in from and hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The birds of paradise were Patrice's favorites. Devin had driven an extra 20 minutes to pick them up. He bypassed the ordinary gas station bouquets, the supermarket carnations, and those wilted daisies floating in murky water. He had visited the florist on Clement Street, the shop with the green canopy and the hand-lettered sign, because Patrice always praised it for delivering the freshest stems. The bouquet now rested on the passenger seat, bundled in brown paper, its bright orange and purple blooms spreading out like something exotic and vibrant. Sunlight streamed through the windshield and highlighted them beautifully. Devin kept his focus on the road ahead. It was Tuesday. He had started work at 6, resolved a ventilation problem in the eastern section of the warehouse, signed off on 2 maintenance plans, and taken a lengthy call from a supplier who always phoned too soon and rambled on. By 9 o'clock, he had everything under control and passed the morning duties to his assistant coordinator, Marcus, who was reliable and improving steadily. Look after your team and they'll look after the job. That was something his father used to say. Devin lived by it. He merged onto the highway and followed the flow of traffic. Patrice had been admitted on Sunday night. Her appendix had flared up without warning, intense and sudden. She had phoned him from the kitchen floor, her voice strained, and Devin was already in the car before she could finish speaking. He had stayed by her side during admission, waited 3 hours in the lounge, and dozed in the chair next to her bed until the nurses assured him she was stable and kindly, but firmly suggested he head home to rest. He didn't sleep much at home. He lay on the bed, still dressed for work, staring upward at the ceiling, remembering her expression when the discomfort peaked, how she had gripped his fingers tightly without meeting his eyes, as if the hold itself mattered more than any soothing words. He had showered, changed clothes, and gone to the office. He was skilled at pushing forward, always had been. Now he was nearly there, ready to share news he had kept to himself for a week because the moment never seemed perfect. The home equity loan had been approved, covering the entire startup costs for her event planning enterprise, the website development, branding materials, initial funding for the first 3 projects. Everything outlined in the business proposal, she had refined 4 times at the dining table, while Devin quietly kept the coffee ready and stayed silent about the late nights. For 3 years, he had supported her pursuit of this goal. He had taken on overtime shifts without turning it into an issue. He had quietly covered the unexpected dental procedure in February, a $1,400 expense he hadn't budgeted for, paid without fanfare because that's what you do for someone who belongs with you. He never tallied the favors, that wasn't his nature. He had practiced delivering the news about the equity line, not because he needed flawless phrasing, but because he wanted the delivery to feel meaningful. He wanted her expression to show she understood he had arranged this deliberately, that it wasn't chance, that he had chosen this path for her sake. He imagined she might shed a few quiet tears. Patrice rarely cried, and when she did, it was subtle, her eyes softening briefly before she composed herself again. He looked forward to witnessing that. The hospital building appeared ahead. Devin turned into the visitor parking area, switched off the engine, and paused for a moment with his hands resting on the steering wheel. The flowers leaned gently against the seat next to him. He lifted them with care. The 3rd-floor hallway was peaceful, typical for hospitals in the late morning. Morning rounds had ended, machines hummed steadily in the background, and the air carried a faint scent of disinfectant and filtered circulation. Devin greeted a nurse he remembered from Sunday evening. She returned the smile. Room 314 lay at the far end of the hall. He moved at his usual steady pace, calm and purposeful, like someone who understood his destination and felt no need to hurry. The bouquet was in his left hand, his jacket neatly adjusted, and a gentle warmth lingered in his chest since leaving the flower shop. He was nearly at the entrance when the voices reached him. The door was cracked open just a few inches, wide enough for conversation to carry clearly. He first recognized Audra's tone, Petrus's longtime friend from their college days. She was chuckling at something in her typical light-hearted manner. Devin slowed his steps, he didn't want to intrude. He positioned himself just outside the doorframe, bouquet at his side, and raised his hand to tap on the wood. Then Petrus spoke, and her words came through distinctly, too precise to misunderstand or reinterpret. Devin's hand remained suspended, he never knocked. Devin stayed rooted in place. His hand hovered, still directed toward the door, his knuckles never touched the surface. Petrus sounded different when she believed no one else could hear, more casual. The gentle warmth she showed publicly had vanished, replaced by something Devin had never encountered. Casual, almost indifferent, as if discussing an issue she had already resolved. "I love Devin," she was saying, "I really do, but it's more like loving a cousin, you know, comfortable, safe. You're happy he's around, but you're not actively picking him." Audra murmured something in reply. Devin missed the exact words. I know, Petrus continued, a faint chuckle following. "I should have walked away 2 years ago, I nearly did. But the business wasn't prepared and neither was I, and you understand, timing matters." Devin slowly lowered his hand, he leaned his back against the wall beside the doorway. The flowers dangled at his side. "He's a decent guy," Audra responded more clearly this time. Devin caught every word. "He is," Petrus replied without hesitation. "He absolutely is a decent guy. He's also the smartest financial decision I've ever made." A brief silence followed. "That equity loan is nearly set. Once the company gets going and I have 12 months of steady income behind me, I'm out. No mess, I've already figured out most of the details." The hallway remained empty in both directions. A monitor chimed somewhere farther down. The overhead lights hummed at a pitch Devin had never noticed until now. "You've really planned this out," Audra said. She wasn't arguing. She was simply processing. "I've been considering it for 3 years. Straightforward. The manner of someone describing a strategy already completed in their thoughts. As if the decision was finalized and reality just hadn't aligned yet. Then Trent asked about me." Devin's jaw clenched slightly. "Trent Fairfax." Petrus spoke the name with a softness reserved for meaningful connections. Gentle around the edges, a touch cautious. "We met for lunch last month. He came up from Charlotte." It was she let the thought linger. It felt like no time had passed at all. "You know what it's like when someone truly understands you?" Audra spoke again, softer. "Petrus, I know." The response was kind yet firm. "I know what you're about to say. But what Trent and I share is authentic. It was real back in college and it still is. I've spent 5 years acting otherwise and I'm exhausted. He's married to you, Petrus." Audra's tone now carried a slight shake. "Devin, he pushes himself to the limit for you, you realize that." A quiet sound, perhaps Petrus adjusting her position in the bed or maybe a casual shrug. "Decent men are common," Audra, direct, confident. The voice of someone who had examined every counter-argument and dismissed them all as solvable. "What I require at this stage is his credit rating and his discretion. That's all. That's everything I need from him, and when the moment arrives, I'll manage it smoothly. He'll recover. Guys like Devin always bounce back." Devin remained pressed against the wall. He wasn't trembling, he observed that fact. He had partly anticipated some bodily reaction matching the weight of what he overheard, but his hands stayed steady. His breathing remained regular. The flowers were simply flowers, bright orange and purple, thoughtfully selected, and he held them loosely as if they had no weight whatsoever. He lingered there a little longer. Then he turned and retraced his steps down the corridor, not hurriedly, not leisurely. The same measured gait he had arrived with, consistent and balanced, the stride of a man who knew his direction. He walked past the nurse's station. He passed a room where a television played softly. He passed the family lounge area with its molded plastic seats, outdated magazines, and a window overlooking the parking structure. He located a seat near the elevator lobby. He sat down. He placed the flowers on the adjacent chair. The brown wrapping paper rustled once and settled. He rested his hands on his knees. He gazed at the closed elevator doors. He remained seated like that for some time, long enough for the elevator to arrive and depart twice. Long enough for a staff member to wheel a cart past and acknowledge him with a nod. Long enough for an internal shift to occur. He wasn't certain what to name it, only that something had changed position, and he recognized that certain aspects of his life would now be different. He reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved his phone. He opened his messaging app. He scrolled until he found Qley Osai's contact. He typed a single sentence, "I need to meet with you tomorrow." At your office, he sent the message. He returned the phone to his pocket. He sat quietly a bit longer, then he rose, adjusted his jacket, and retrieved the flowers. He carried them back along the hallway toward room 314. He knocked softly. He waited. When Patris invited him in, Devin opened the door and offered her a warm smile. "Hey," he said. "How are you holding up?" He extended the bouquet toward her. Devin remained for 2 hours. He sat in the chair beside her hospital bed, the one with the thin padding and metal armrests, and played the role she anticipated perfectly: attentive, caring. He topped off her water glass without prompting. He chuckled at the appropriate times. When she reached for his hand, he offered it readily. The flowers were placed in a plastic pitcher on the windowsill. The nurses lacked a suitable vase. The birds of paradise appeared strikingly vivid against the plain white walls, too full of life for that sterile space. Devin avoided looking at them afterward. Audra departed 20 minutes after his arrival. She had embraced Patris gently, mindful of the surgical area, then turned to Devin with a smile that seemed slightly strained. He responded with one that felt natural. "She needs rest," Audra told Devin, framing caution as thoughtfulness. "She'll get it," Devin replied, "I'll see to it." He slept in their bed that night with the usual 5 inches of space between them. He prepared breakfast the following morning and asked Patris what she preferred before heading to the cafeteria, maintaining the routine. He carried her discharge bag over his left shoulder, pulled the car up to the hospital entrance, and assisted her into the passenger seat as if nothing had changed. She touched his arm as he exited the parking area. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she remarked. He kept his eyes forward. "UD manage," he answered, offering a small smile which she interpreted as affection. He helped her settle comfortably at home. Pillows fluffed, prescriptions arranged on the bedside table, remote control handy, a full glass of water, and a small bowl of crackers nearby because she had mentioned her appetite was still off. He mentioned he needed to stop by the office for a few hours. She said she understood. She planned to rest. He drove to Qley's office and arrived at 11:14 that morning. Qley Osai's practice occupied the second floor of a slim building on Clement Street, situated above a dry cleaning service and opposite a parking facility. The reception area featured 2 leather seats, a modest table without reading materials, and a receptionist named Donna, who had been there for 11 years and knew better than to inquire. She ushered Devin inside without announcement. Qley was already standing when Devin entered. He had prepared the space by clearing the chairs in front of his desk and moving the usual files to the credenza behind him. He had anticipated the message since Devin's text the previous evening. They exchanged a handshake, they took their seats. Devin described the entire sequence. He recounted it methodically, exactly as he handled most things, starting from the start without adding commentary. He mentioned where he had parked. He described what he had been carrying. He explained the precise instant he had halted, and then he repeated Patris's words almost exactly, including the brief pauses and the chuckle. Qley listened attentively without interjecting. His face remained neutral. He had a yellow legal pad ready and a pen in hand, yet he wrote nothing while Devin spoke only afterward. "How recently was that lunch with Trent Fairfax?" he inquired. "She mentioned last month." Qley jotted a note. Then he placed his pen down on the pad. "There's something important you should be aware of," he stated. "I've been weighing for some time whether it was appropriate for me to share." He met Devin's eyes directly. 6 months ago, Patris reached out to a family law attorney, someone I know through professional circles at a different firm with no overlap in my work. She was looking into her possibilities. The meeting itself was private, but the fact that it happened isn't entirely hidden. My colleague brought it up casually without specifics. The name stood out in context. Devin held Qley's gaze steadily. "She's been organizing this," Qley continued. He spoke plainly without cushioning the impact. "This isn't some fleeting emotion that escalated, it's a deliberate plan." A moment passed, then another. "How long do you estimate she's been developing it?" Devin asked. "From what you've described, at least 2 years of clear intent, likely more." Devin gave a single nod. He glanced toward the window, then back at Qley. "I need the complete overview before taking any steps. Financially, legally, I need to grasp the full situation." "Then we begin with gathering records," Qley said. "Joint accounts, personal accounts, any business costs you've funded, the equity loan paperwork, all of it. I need a detailed timeline and supporting documents wherever possible." Devin pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. He was already compiling a list. He prepared dinner that evening. Chicken soup at her suggestion, he handled the cooking. They shared the meal at the kitchen table. Petra still moved cautiously, and Devin checked if she needed anything before turning in. She said she was fine. She gave him a light kiss on the cheek. She wished him good night. He watched the light beneath the bedroom door go dark, then he returned to the kitchen table in the darkness. He left the lights off. He reached for the legal pad kept on the counter for shopping lists and household reminders. He drew it closer, and he clicked his pen. He started writing. Devin rose at 5:30. He folded the legal pad and tucked it into the bottom of his work bag, underneath his extra charger and the worn facilities manual he hadn't consulted in 2 months. Then he washed his hands at the kitchen sink, dried them with the towel, and began brewing coffee. By the time Petra woke and moved slowly down the hallway, the eggs were ready, the toast was warm, and orange juice was poured. He heard her careful steps, still protective of her healing midsection, and had her plate set at her usual place before she entered the kitchen. "You didn't need to prepare all this," she said. "I know," he replied. He placed a fork beside the plate. "How's the discomfort this morning?" "Improving." She eased into the chair carefully, steadying herself with one hand on the table, around a 5. "Take the ibuprofen with your meal. Not on an empty stomach?" "Yes, doctor," she teased, smiling at him. He smiled in return. He was quite skilled at it. She rested frequently during those initial days. That was normal, the physician had warned them. Devin worked remotely when possible and visited the office as needed, and in the intervals between errands, meal prep, and routine household upkeep for someone recovering. He sat at the desk in the guest room with his laptop open and reviewed the finances thoroughly. He started with the joint checking account. He accessed 3 years of statements via the bank's online system and examined them systematically, from the earliest entries onward, missing nothing. He sought patterns, and once aware of what to search for, patterns emerged readily. The transfers appeared first, modest initially, $300 at times, $250 at others. All shifted to an account he knew as Petra's separate savings, opened before their marriage, the one she sometimes used for what she termed personal matters. He had never raised questions about it. He had no cause to, but the sums had increased and occurred more often and across 36 months. Devin determined that nearly $19,000 had shifted from their shared account into that one without any discussion. He recorded the total on a new legal pad. His script remained neat and compact. Next came the cash withdrawals. He compared the dates against his own work schedule. The overtime weekends were straightforward to spot. He had documented them all for HR, and the matches were clear. Saturday mornings, while he managed urgent operations at the logistics site, $200 would be withdrawn from an ATM 4 miles from home, usually the same machine, similar amounts. He photographed every statement using his phone, steady grip, clear shots, every detail readable. The business-related spending demanded closer scrutiny. Petra maintained a separate business account for her developing event planning efforts, and Devin had been contributing funds regularly for 2 years. Startup money, she called it. Capital for building vendor ties, permits, and professional affiliations that she described as crucial for attracting suitable clients. He gathered every receipt she had ever provided. He verified vendor names against details she had shared in conversations. Some aligned, plenty did not. He created a separate column for the mismatches. He avoided jumping to conclusions. He recorded only what he could verify. Speculation served no purpose. Verified information did. He located information on Trent Fairfax one Thursday afternoon while Petra rested. He began with LinkedIn. The profile was professionally maintained. Polished headshot, clean design, the sort of page that conveyed seriousness without stating it. Trent was 39. He operated a specialized marketing advisory firm from a shared workspace in Midtown. His listed abilities were general in the typical way for such services: brand development, client relations, leadership guidance, but his recommendations were legitimate and his network extensive. Devin explored his company website, simple layout, assured wording. The client list included 6 mid-sized regional firms. The endorsements were positive and detailed enough to seem authentic. He discovered a profile in a local business magazine from 2 years earlier. Trent was portrayed as a networker, someone whose strength lies as much in connections as in services provided. Devin reread that description twice. A professional like that, whose entire business relied on referrals, trust, and cultivated relationships, depended entirely on his standing. His consultancy offered no physical goods, no stock, no complex systems. It relied on connections. Devin made a mental note. He reached no conclusions yet. He simply recorded it as useful information and continued. He phoned Qley from the car that evening. "I gathered details on Fairfax," Devin reported. "Modest setup." Relies heavily on reputation and referrals, perhaps 6 clients currently. Qley paused briefly, notable timing. A fraternity connection of mine, Marcus, who handles corporate communications at Dunmore Group, mentioned last week that Fairfax's company inquired about a potential contract. They're in preliminary discussions. Devin observed a traffic signal changing ahead. Is that so? Yes, Qley confirmed. Neither pursued the topic further. That night, Devin shut down the laptop, organized the papers into a manila folder, and placed it in his work bag next to the legal pad. He zipped the bag shut. He positioned it beside the desk chair. He walked to the bedroom entrance. The room was dim, illuminated only by faint light filtering around the curtains. Beatrice lay on her side, one hand beneath the pillow, breathing deeply and regularly. Her hair spread across the pillow. In that soft light, she resembled the woman he had first fallen for. He stood in the doorway watching her for a while, then he gently pulled the door nearly shut, leaving a small gap. He returned to the guest room. He had additional tasks ahead. Devin called her at 9:15 the next morning, once Beatrice had taken her medicine and settled back in bed with a book. He kept his tone light and affectionate. The voice of a husband focused only on doing something thoughtful for his wife. Audra, hey, apologies for calling unexpectedly. He leaned against the kitchen counter, coffee cup in his free hand. I've been considering a modest gathering for Beatrice. Now that she's improving, just a small group relaxed at home, nothing exhausting. I thought you might assist in organizing it. There was a short pause from her side. Oh yes, absolutely, that's thoughtful, Devin. I figured you'd want to be part of it, he said. You're her closest friend. Another brief pause, sure. When did you have in mind? That's what I wanted to discuss. Are you available this week? Coffee? They arranged to meet Thursday morning at a cafe called Cornerstone on the east side. Neutral territory, lively enough to feel ordinary, quiet enough for conversation. Devin arrived early. He selected a table by the window, ordered black coffee, and appeared absorbed in his phone when Audra entered. She seemed weary, or perhaps burdened. The expression of someone carrying a weight longer than anticipated. Devin stood to greet her, smiled warmly. Thanks for making time, of course. She removed her scarf and sat opposite him, wrapping both hands around her cup as soon as it arrived. How is she doing? Honestly, improving daily, Devin said, still uncomfortable. You know, Beatrice, she struggles with slowing down. Audra gave a small, real laugh. No, she definitely doesn't. Has she appeared particularly worried to you recently? Devin asked casually. Like a concerned spouse. Before the procedure, I mean. I sensed something bothering her, but she wouldn't open up. Audra glanced down at her cup. I mean the business matters. That's constantly on her mind. Right? Devin nodded thoughtfully. The launch schedule, she's been concerned about that. Yeah, Audra rotated her cup slightly, the usual concerns. Has she shared any particular details? I just want to grasp what she's facing so I don't add extra stress. No, nothing detailed. Audra's reply sounded a bit too even, too rehearsed. The tone of someone practiced at withholding specifics and hoping it showed. Devin didn't press. He simply nodded again, reflectively, and allowed a brief silence before shifting to topics like locations, attendee lists, and whether Beatrice would prefer daytime or evening. He remained agreeable, practical, and entirely neutral. And after about 40 minutes, Audra had clearly eased up, her posture relaxed, her hands no longer tense around the cup. She believed she had navigated the conversation successfully. Devin allowed her to hold that belief. He covered the bill casually and they walked out together. He held the door for her and they stood on the sidewalk in the gentle morning light when he paused and looked at her directly. Audra. His voice was calm, even neither accusing nor begging. I need you to understand that I'm not the person Beatrice described to you. Her expression shifted subtly, a slight change around the eyes, a tightening near her mouth. It was sufficient. When this concludes, Devin said, I hope you keep that in mind. He didn't wait for a reply. He gave her a brief nod that ended the exchange smoothly and walked to his car. Audra called Beatrice before Devin reached the highway. He expected she would. That evening, Beatrice said she felt worn out and retired early. Devin waited until her light went out. Then he opened his laptop at the guest room desk and accessed their shared family calendar. He had relied on it for years to coordinate his work hours, home repairs, and everyday household scheduling that accumulates in a marriage. Beatrice used it too, though less regularly, leaving enough entries to review. He examined the past 18 months. He cross-checked every documented cash withdrawal date with her calendar notes. The matches were precise. 3 withdrawals corresponded to a weekend she had noted as Nashville, girls' trip, 2 others aligned with a Friday marked vendor MTG, Charlotte.